Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a grand honor pour moi. It's a great honor for me to be part of Einstein's 100. For me, I think about the words of Einstein, and he said that people by the age of 18 have largely accumulated tremendous common sense, most of it many prejudices along the way, implying that we would have to shed those burdens and handicaps in order to move forward. For me, it was by the age of 16 because I had accumulated a view of a person with a disability to be looked at with pity, to have little opportunity to contribute, and ultimately to have little hope. And when I had an automobile accident and was paralyzed, not able to walk again, I brought those prejudices into my life and struggled immensely because of my own attitude. I had to be transformed. I had to reinvigorate my imagination, to be inspired by others who had been there before, role models who showed the way, and to think about the definition of an athlete, that nowhere in that definition did it say that I had to use my legs in order to be one, that I could reframe and continue my life to achieve my hopes and dreams, and to be the athlete I'd always want to through the Paralympic Games. It was a great moment for me to be able to realize that I had control and that I had the ability not only to achieve goals and dreams, but to be able to make a difference and pay it forward along the way. I decided to wheel around the world, naively believing that I could create a global movement, and that over those 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days, we created an impact, but largely at the end, the world was still huge, disconnected, and very inaccessible. And the dream of a cure for spinal cord injury was barely uttered through the lips of scientists at the time. There was a long way to go. And in 30 years, the world has made great progress. Lots has happened. We've emerged from a largely charitable view of people with disabilities to an entrenched human rights view, anchored by the United Nations Declaration of Rights and Freedoms for People with Disabilities. Scientists are making great progress in opportunities for neuroprotection and neural regrowth, and the possibility of a cure is being uttered by scientists everywhere as a distant dream that's possible. But of course, there's been still challenges. Disability is still fragmented. It's fragmented by clinical diagnosis, by body part orientation. And it's interesting to note that even though the World Health Organization says that there's over 1 billion people on the planet living today, and that it's the world's largest minority, that it still doesn't become part of our daily consciousness. And we have to change that. And there's good news that's happened as well, that changes in the world have offered great hope for acceleration on this journey that I had on my Man in Motion tour 30 years ago. A dream for a cure for spinal cord injury, and the world is accessible and inclusive for people with disabilities. The things that have happened are largely, number one, that aging baby boomers are entering this field, many of them having disabling conditions and demanding a new era of possibility, driving economies and cultural value proposition, and of course, technology. Technology which has made the world smaller and more connected and allowed us to come together to create that true global movement, anchored by solutions networks. And we have to be able to now converge this largely fragmented community into common interests and barriers that need to be broken down. These barriers are, number one, is to make sure that we remind people that disability is a big deal on this planet. Charitably, human rights, social, economically, it's an imperative. And two, that attitudes have to be moved from negative to positive. We have to see the ability in disability. And number three, that we need to remove barriers to participation and inclusion and to full contribution. And I believe that if we create global certification programs, particularly if we start in the built environment, the places and spaces that people live, work, and play, that we can then start to measure in common language the objectives of where we are, and we can move forward to be able to define where we need to be able to get to that journey that I started all those years ago. I believe that by 2050, we will be a world that is completely accessible and inclusive. And I believe the cure for spinal cord injury will happen. And we need to be able to make sure that today's standards don't become tomorrow's handicaps, and make sure we constantly drive new perspectives going forward as we see new possibilities. And over the next 30 years, as we see great progress accelerate with these solutions, we will also see new frontiers be crossed through human potential. I see in the future that a person with a spinal cord injury, possibly from Nepal, possibly a Sherpa who was injured in an avalanche, will be able to summit Mount Everest. Instead of being there in service of others in their glory, they'll be there in common purpose to be able to define the potential of the human spirit and make a contribution, and to show that there are no boundaries or barriers on this earth that can't be crossed. I also believe that a person with spinal cord injury will go into space, will leave the wheelchair behind, to be in the International Space Station, to circumnavigate the world multiple times in a day, to be able to broadcast to billions of people around the world that there are no barriers on this earth or beyond that can't be crossed. I even believe that one day the wheelchair will be something you'll see in a museum. Einstein inspires me to believe that I should never give up on my dreams and that anything is possible. Tout est possible. Merci beaucoup, mesdames et messieurs. Thank you very much. Thank you.